Hi, I'm Amanda, and I'm starting a new series here on Lalite Design all about at-home alterations that I believe are essential for everybody to know, especially women. The purpose of this series is to share the knowledge of some alterations that can be done at home with minimal equipment and that can save you on your wardrobe. So that item of clothing that you don't really wear a lot, but you really like, but it has that small issue, maybe there's an alteration that can fix that. If this is something that you're interested in or want to learn more about, stay tuned, consider subscribing, and look out for more videos where I share some more alterations that can be done at home. So in today's video, I'm going to show you an alteration that I have done on myself many times. It solved a big issue for me, and I believe it's an issue that is common for a lot of people, especially women. And so it involves a button-down shirt or shirt dress like I'm wearing. And the issue is the button placket here opening up when you wear it. It opens up just along, usually between these buttons along the bust line. This is a common problem, especially for women with a larger bust. And I have found a solution that works for me and that I hope can potentially work for you. It involves adding a hidden snap right here in the button placket. So today I'm going to show you how I added a snap to this dress, and I hope that you find it interesting and that it can help you. So if this is something that interests you, stay tuned for the tutorial coming up next. So here we have a shirt dress. It's super cute, easy to wear. Can definitely wear it to work or just out. But one thing that really bothers me is here. Now, being a woman with a larger than average bust, this is a common occurrence for me, where right here, the button's always pulling. No matter what I do, if I try to push my shoulders in, it still does it throughout the day. And it comes down to a point where you don't want to unbutton this button because it might be too revealing. And you don't want to button it all the way up because you're still going to have that same issue. So a solution here is to add a snap inside that'll close this part of the placket. All you need is a sewing needle, thread, and a plastic or metal snap. And this can easily be removed if you ever wanted to remove it or give the shirt or dress to somebody else who doesn't need that. This is a quick alteration that can work on a shirt dress like this or any button-down shirt or blouse that gives you this issue. So I'm going to walk you through how to add a snap here. The first thing you're going to want to do is to try on your shirt or dress and mark with a pin where you would want to close it. So you can mark on the top part of the button placket, and you can take another pin and mark on the bottom. Just be careful not to pin yourself, but you're just placing the pins to where you would want to place that snap inside. So next I'll show you how to sew that snap on. And here's what you'll need for this alteration. You need a pair of small scissors, needle and a thread. Get a closest matching thread. I couldn't find an exact match to this mint color, so I went with a neutral beige that won't stand out too much once it's sewn on. And a small needle. And for the snaps, here are your two options. You can go with this plastic see-through one. It's clear, so when you sew it, you won't really be able to see it when you move around or anything. Or you can go with these metal ones that are silver. These are just the two options that I had now. Usually these don't come in specific colors. You can get them from any craft store, and just make sure they're the smaller size that would fit on your placket. Okay, and we're gonna get started with the alteration here. So you're gonna lay your garment down, your shirt or your dress, you're gonna lay it down flat. You're gonna have those pins that you pinned on when you were wearing it still on. And we're going to button it just so we can make sure that placement is even. It's gonna change when it's on and off the body. So button it all the way up, just to get an idea. So we should want it about center between these two buttons to make it a nice, easy close that is even and won't pucker again when it's worn. So I'm just gonna move those pins up just a little bit to match each other. And we're going to thread our needle. A good rule of thumb for the length of the thread is from the length from your thumb to your elbow. That's a good amount for this. You're going to take your snap. I'm going to use the plastic ones that I showed you before. So one is the part that pushes into the snap and one is the one that holds it. To make it easier, we're going to put the one that holds it, so that's with the little, I guess you would call it prong coming out. That's going to be on the bottom part of your placket, and the part that you push into is going to be on the top. That'll make it a little easier for when you're putting it on, just to easily press it down and close it. So let's start with the bottom piece. We're going to open up the placket. Now that we have it pinned, we need to open it so we can sew. We're going to take our needle and thread and start it from the inside of the fabric, the underside of the placket. We're going to push our needle through the center to start. Pull it nice and tight. Make sure you have a good knot on the end of your thread. Take this bottom piece of the snap. It has, I don't know if you can really see, but it has 4 sections that you can wrap around. You want to make sure you wrap around all 4 of those sections to keep it secure. We're going to place the thread, your needle and thread, through one of those. Place it down to where our pin is, the center of our pin, and just lift it up, holding it with your thumb. And you're going to just loop your needle through just one layer of that placket. Usually a button placket is 2 layers of fabric. You're just going to be going through one. And that's because this is a thicker fabric and you want your needle to be able to make it through and make it a little easier to sew. Plus, this may be a temporary fix. As I mentioned before, you might want to remove it later. So it's easier if it's going through one. And you're just picking up a little piece of that fabric and looping it through. We don't want to create any big holes here or marks from the needle. And as you go, you can remove the pin if it gets in your way, since now that you have part of this snap sewn down, you can easily continue. So you can just do, since this might be temporary, 2 to 3 loops around each section. And continue that until you have it placed. So we have this now sewn here. As you can tell, it's not exactly centered on the placket, but it's still okay because once it's snapped, it might be nicer that it's a little closer to the opening so that it doesn't pucker. We'll see the finished product. So once you finish sewing, to loop this, to finish off your thread knot, you're going to loop it back through all the way to the back, pull it through, see where you started your knot, loop it under your knot. You can include some fabric and your knot, and then loop it back through. To seal that knot, make sure it's nice and secure. You can loop it through again. Try to keep it as neat as possible, as close as possible, so then when you're done, you just see one single knot. And to finish off the thread so that it doesn't unravel, we're gonna poke it back through the placket, push it through to the end, pull all the way, and then once that thread is out of the way, that needle is all the way out, you're just going to cut as close as possible to the placket. Don't cut the fabric, and that will secure your thread inside and help it to not unravel with wear. All right, next we're going to sew on the part that pushes onto your snap. As you can see here, just has a center circle in the middle. That's the part that pushes onto your snap. And the other parts are just like the other piece. You're just going to sew around it 2 to 3 times to secure it. So to make sure that we have the positioning right, since we sewed down our bottom piece already, I just added a pin to make an X to where that middle point is, so we can easily add this snap piece on. And before you sew on, just make sure that it presses on and secures on the right side. Sometimes one side won't snap as easily. So after you do that, we're going to place the button over the X that our pins showed, and you're going to be sewing from the inside. You don't want any stitches to be showing on the outside of the placket because this is going to be a hidden snap. So we're going to start our thread on the inside of the placket, again going through only one layer of that placket because we don't want anything to show on the outside. And it's a little hard to hold it with the needles in too, but you should really try your best to just keep that placement until you get a few stitches in. So again, we're going to sew it through the 4 sections. Take your time here, make sure it's nice and even. So 2 to 3 loops on each side. And now that I've gotten 2, I'm just going to unbutton my button here so it's a little easier to turn it. Now that I've sewn down 2 sections, I'm going to take these pins out. Make sure they don't leave a mark on the outside of your placket, and make sure you didn't get any stitches on the outside of your placket. We're going to finish this off. As you're going, you can test the placement before you completely finish, just to make sure that it meets, and it does. Then just continue. So we're going to continue sewing around those 4 sections of the snap. Make sure you don't sew in that center section. That's the section that's going to snap onto your snap. So you don't want to be adding anything there. You want to keep that nice and clear so it can have a nice, easy closure, which we will test once we try it on. A side note is that these plastic snaps tend to not be as sturdy as the metal ones. However, given this style of shirt, I would prefer the plastic clear one rather than a heavier metal one, but we'll see how it goes, and if we need to change it later, we can. So we finished sewing that off, and we're going to finish it a little differently than this way because again, we don't want any stitches on the outside placket. So instead, we're going to take our needle and just sew into the fabric again, and you can pick up some of your threads too, and just make a knot by looping through that fabric before you pull it. I mean that thread before you pull it. Tighten it up around the snap. You can do another one if you like, just to make sure it's nice and secure. And then the same as we did with our other piece, we're going to thread your needle through the placket out to just the side corner, side edge, pull, and then cut as closely to the placket as possible. Okay, so now we have that snap sewn on. We have the inside and the top layer. What we can do while it's laying flat before we try it on is just make sure that these line up and close. You just have to push and then button it up. And you just want to make sure that it lays nice and flat while it's flat on your table, and it looks like it does. And you don't see your snap from the outside, you don't see any stitches on the top part of your placket, and the placket lines up evenly. If you were off center, the placket might lean over to here or not cover this bottom placket stitch. So this looks all good. So now let's try it on. Okay, so we're trying our shirt dress on, and I just wanted to show you, without the snap being snapped, the difference. So here it is without the snap being closed, and then we can easily just push down and close that snap, and we don't have that issue anymore. I can push my shoulders back and there's no opening here that will reveal my bust. So again, this is an easy alteration that can be done at home, minimal supplies, minimal skill required. You just have to have some patience, and you can do this to any shirt or blouse that gives you this problem. So I hope this was helpful to you, and thank you for watching.